In the gleaming crystal halls of the Galactic Xenographic Directorate on Thaler Prime, 10 crimson markers burned across the holographic star map like open wounds in the void. They pulsed with a menacing red glow that cast long, threatening shadows over the assembled counselors who shifted uneasily in their seats. 10 new Deathworlds had been identified by the probe swarm, each one more terrifying than the last according to the flawless and infallible probe data that left no room for doubt or error in its cold calculations. Each location exceeded Class 12 lethality thresholds by significant margins that triggered every alarm protocol in the system without exception. Each one was now scheduled for immediate and permanent quarantine with no possibility of appeal or reconsideration. No contact would be allowed under any circumstances whatsoever. No trade routes would ever form across the sealed zones that would cut them off completely. No future awaited whatever unfortunate species called those places home in the vastness of space. The galaxy would simply move on without remorse or hesitation, sealing away the dangers forever and erasing any trace of their existence from the galactic records so that future generations would never even know they had once existed or posed any threat. Dr. Arlen Kane, Earth's only xenogeologist representative, stood motionless among the towering alien counselors with his hands clenched tightly at his sides to hide the trembling. His heart pounded violently against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and determination that echoed loudly in his ears and made his vision narrow with the intensity of the moment. Sweat prickled at the back of his neck as he stared at the glowing coordinates floating in the air before him, each one a dagger aimed directly at the heart of his homeworld and everything he had ever known or fought to protect. He knew every single marker with painful clarity, their positions etched deeply into his memory from years of intensive study focused on Earth's most extreme and unforgiving environments that most humans avoided entirely out of instinct for self-preservation. They were not 10 separate planets scattered across the cold emptiness of space. They were not distant, unknown horrors lurking in faraway systems waiting to claim unwary travelers who ventured too close without proper preparation and advanced technology. They were something far more personal and immediate than any alien could imagine. They were 10 different locations on one single world. His world. Earth. The director's cold mechanical voice sliced through the chamber like a razor-sharp blade, carrying the finality of an execution order that could not be overturned or delayed even for a second. Quarantine protocols will be activated within the hour. 10 Deathworlds within one system is unprecedented in all recorded galactic history. This entire sector must be sealed forever. No exceptions will be made under any conditions whatsoever, no matter the arguments presented. The words landed like a death sentence, heavy and irreversible, crushing down upon him with the force of an collapsing star. Arlen felt the crushing weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on his shoulders with immense and unrelenting force, the future of his entire species hanging precariously in the balance like a fragile thread about to snap under the strain. One wrong move now, and humanity would be cut off from the stars for eternity, isolated and forgotten in the vastness of the cosmos with no hope of ever joining the galactic community or sharing in its wonders and advancements. Arlen stepped forward into the center of the chamber with measured steps, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the rising dread clawing at his throat like invisible claws that threatened to choke the life out of him. Director. Those 10 markers are not 10 different worlds at all. They are 10 locations on the same planet. My planet. Earth. A heavy silence fell across the chamber, thick and suffocating, as if the air itself had been suddenly sucked away into the vacuum of space, leaving only tension behind. Then instant chaos erupted all around him, tentacles whipping wildly in agitation, compound eyes clicking rapidly in disbelief and confusion, holographic quarantine votes surging into the red zone with alarming and unstoppable speed as the counselors reacted with visible shock and growing fear at the implications of what this revelation could mean for the entire sector. Arlen raised his hands slowly and deliberately, fighting desperately to keep his tone calm and measured while his mind raced frantically through every possible outcome and every potential disaster that could unfold in the next few moments if he failed to convince them. Before you destroy my home from orbit without hesitation or mercy, give me one chance to prove the truth beyond any doubt. Send a single proctor. I will escort him personally to every site on that list, no matter how dangerous or extreme the conditions become. Let him see the truth with his own eyes and sensors. If he still demands quarantine when we finish the full tour, I will accept it without any resistance or further argument from humanity. The director's frill flared with dangerous violet light, pulsing with deep suspicion and barely contained authority that made the entire room feel smaller and more oppressive.
Very well, human.
But the proctor will carry a live Corrigan lethality assessment device calibrated to the highest standards of accuracy. Real-time readings will be transmitted continuously back to the Directorate.
No lies. No tricks of any kind will be tolerated.
One wrong step or misleading statement, and your entire world disappears from the galactic charts forever. The decision will be final and irreversible with no possibility of reversal or second chance. Arlen swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry as desert sand under a blazing sun that offered no relief. The fate of 8 billion humans now rested entirely on a single guided tour through the most lethal places his planet could possibly offer to any visitor. Every single step would be watched with unblinking scrutiny by the device and its operators. Every reading would be recorded and analyzed in minute detail back at the Directorate by experts who had never encountered anything like Earth. And he carried the desperate hope that the alien observer would not realize exactly how dangerous humanity truly was, not just surviving the extremes against all odds, but thriving because of them, growing stronger and more resilient in the face of constant adversity that would break lesser species in a single generation. One miscalculation during the journey, and Earth would be lost to the stars forever with no second chances or appeals possible. 20 tense hours later, filled with anxious waiting and sleepless nights, the sleek diplomatic shuttle settled outside New Nairobi spaceport under a bright African sun that felt deceptively welcoming and warm. The ramp hissed open with a sound that echoed like a final warning, releasing a wave of warm air into the cabin that carried unfamiliar scents of a living world. Proctor Thalix of the Corrigan Concord stepped onto Earth for the first time, his presence imposing and undeniably alien in every way imaginable to a human eye. He was nearly 2.5 meters tall, his body covered in iridescent blue scales that shimmered like oil on water under the harsh sunlight. For golden eyes scanned everything around him with cold, calculating precision, missing nothing no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. A small black orb floated silently beside his shoulder, the lethality assessment device that would decide Earth's fate with its impartial data. Its holographic display already glowed an ominous amber, a clear warning that set Arlen's nerves on edge from the very first moment of their meeting. Current planetary lethality index, class 8.2, elevated.
Extreme caution advised.
Thalix's translator crackled coldly through the warm air, its tone flat and mechanical with no trace of emotion or empathy.
Dr. Kane. 10 sites. 10 assessments. Begin immediately.
There will be no delays or excuses of any kind during this evaluation. Arlen forced a calm smile onto his face despite the knot in his stomach and shook the proctor's gloved hand firmly, though inside his stomach twisted with unbearable tension that made his palms sweat noticeably under the pressure.
Call me Arlen. And Proctor.
You might want to tighten that suit right now before we start.
Earth doesn't believe in mild conditions at all.
It tests everything that walks its surface to the absolute limit and beyond what most species can handle. The first stop came far too quickly for comfort, leaving no time to prepare mentally for what was to come. The shuttle doors opened onto an endless ocean of burning golden dunes in the heart of the Sahara Desert that stretched to the horizon in every direction as far as the eye could see. The temperature sat at 50.4 degrees Celsius, and the humidity was so low it stole the moisture from your lungs with every single breath you took. The air shimmered like a mirage, distorting the horizon into a hazy, deceptive nightmare that played tricks on the eyes and mind alike in the relentless heat. Thalix's environmental suit whined instantly as its cooling system screamed into overdrive, struggling hard against the sudden onslaught of extreme heat that pressed in from all sides. Ambient temperature exceeds safe Corrigan limits by more than 400%. Solar radiation will kill unprotected life in under 40 minutes without shielding. This place alone qualifies as a death world. How can anything live here without perishing instantly in such conditions that defy logic? Arlen stepped out wearing only lightweight desert fatigues and sunglasses that offered minimal protection against the fury. The brutal heat clawed viciously at his exposed skin, trying to bake him alive from the inside out, but he kept his face perfectly calm, refusing to show even the slightest weakness in front of the observer.
This is the Sahara, Proctor.
Humans have walked these dunes for 30,000 years, adapting to its fury generation after generation through sheer perseverance and cultural knowledge. Right now, Tuareg nomads are likely making tea just beyond those distant ridges, unbothered by the furnace around them, treating it as part of their daily life without complaint or fear. He bent down and scooped a handful of scorching sand into his palm, letting the hot grains run slowly through his fingers like a casual demonstration of human resilience in the face of nature's wrath and indifference. The LED orb pulsed brighter, its readings climbing steadily as it processed the harsh environmental data pouring in from every direction. Lethality Index, Class 9.1. Thalix's four eyes narrowed sharply in disbelief, the golden irises contracting with visible shock at the sight.
Your species evolved here.
In this oven of relentless heat and dryness that defies all reasonable survival parameters for advanced life forms. Arlen's voice stayed level and controlled, though his pulse raced like a hunted animal sensing danger closing in from all sides.
This is only the beginning, Proctor.
There are people here who call this a pleasant day and go about their business as usual. The real tests lie ahead, and they will challenge everything you believe about planetary limits and what life can endure over time. As the shuttle lifted off into the clear sky once more, the LED chimed again with a sharp, warning tone that cut through the cabin like an accusation of impending doom. Class 9.7. The proctor scales flickered with visible growing unease, a subtle ripple that betrayed his rising alarm at the escalating numbers that refused to stabilize or drop. Next, the shuttle doors opened onto the blinding white salt flats of Death Valley, California, where the sun beat down mercilessly without mercy or pause. The temperature had climbed past 56 degrees Celsius with no relief in sight for miles around. The ground itself felt hot enough to melt rubber soles, radiating heat upward in waves that made the air dance and warp like a living entity intent on destruction and exhaustion. Thalix's suit flashed urgent amber warnings across its display, the alerts growing more insistent and frequent with every passing second of exposure.
This is worse than the previous sight by a wide margin. Lower atmospheric pressure combined with extreme heat. Heat index beyond all recorded parameters for any known species in the galaxy. Your probes marked this as an entirely separate world. The variance is impossible for one planet to sustain without collapsing entirely under its own contradictions. Arlen wiped sweat from his burning eyes with the back of his hand and continued walking steadily across the blazing basin, each step crunching loudly on the salt crust that cracked underfoot like brittle bones. They call it Badwater Basin. Lowest point in North America.
Every summer, determined humans run a 135-mile marathon through this furnace without hesitation or second thoughts. In July, when the heat is at its most merciless and unforgiving, pushing bodies to the breaking point and beyond what should be possible. He pointed to a small weathered plaque recording the all-time high temperature, a humble testament to human stubbornness and refusal to yield to the elements. The LED orb spun faster, its internal mechanisms whirring with intensity as it recalibrated to the new extremes that kept climbing. Class 10.4. Thalix's voice dropped to a tense whisper filled with disbelief and growing concern that could no longer be hidden behind professionalism.
Your fragile bodies should be cooking alive right now. How do you stand it without collapsing under the strain of such conditions?
Arlen met his gaze without flinching for even a moment, though fear gnawed at his gut like a persistent shadow that refused to leave him alone.
We sweat. We endure. We complain about it later on our networks when it is safe to do so. Keep moving, Proctor.
The list is still long, and the readings will only climb higher as we go deeper into Earth's most unforgiving extremes that have shaped us. The tension thickened like a gathering storm as they descended into the crushing dark of the ocean, the pressure building both outside the vessel and deep within Arlen's chest with every passing moment. The submersible plunged 11 kilometers into the Mariana Trench with the hull groaning under immense strain that tested its limits. Pressure groaned and creaked against the reinforced hull like an angry living thing trying to crush them into oblivion without mercy or pause. Outside the thick viewport there was only freezing blackness and occasional ghostly flashes of bioluminescence from creatures that had never seen sunlight in their entire existence deep below. Thalix's suit triple-sealed itself with urgent clicks and whirs, reinforcing its defenses against the deadly environment that surrounded them.
11,000 meters depth. 1,100 atmospheres of pressure bearing down relentlessly. No light penetrates this far. No oxygen exists in the water.
This abyss should be completely sterile, a void where life cannot exist by any known rules of biology. The exterior lights revealed pale snailfish and strange amphipods drifting past like silent ghosts in the eternal night. Arlen spoke quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was revealing to an increasingly unsettled observer who was struggling to process it all. Humans have been here multiple times despite the risks involved. We built machines that survive pressures that would flatten your body into paste in seconds. We mapped it thoroughly over many expeditions. We named it Challenger Deep with pride in our achievement. And soon, wealthy tourists will pay small fortunes for selfies at the bottom of the world, turning the abyss into a destination for the bold and curious. The LED flickered in the dim red emergency light, its readings updating with mechanical precision that felt almost accusatory in the confined space of the submersible. Class 11.2 Thalix stared at the human beside him, all four eyes wide with dawning horror that could not be concealed no matter how hard he tried. One planet can truly contain all of this impossible variance? It defies every law of planetary stability and biological possibility that we have ever documented across thousands of worlds. Arlen did not answer immediately, letting the silence stretch to build the moment. The air inside the sub felt thicker with every meter they rose back toward the surface, the unspoken threat of quarantine hanging heavier than the water above them, pressing down on his chest with increasing force that made it hard to breathe normally. High above the world on the frozen slopes, wind screamed at 200 kilometers per hour across the icy ridges of Mount Everest. Oxygen was barely a third of what a body needed to function normally at sea level. The temperature sat at -30°C and was falling fast, turning every breath into a painful stab of ice that burned the lungs with each inhalation. Thalix's suit labored heavily, its systems straining audibly against the thin, freezing air that offered no mercy or respite. His breathing grew ragged even through the advanced filters designed for harsh conditions across the galaxy. Thin air that starves the lungs of oxygen. Freezing cold that shatters bone and freezes blood in the veins. Wind strong enough to hurl a body into oblivion like a discarded toy. This should kill any carbon-based life within minutes of exposure without protection. Arlen planted his ice axe firmly on the south col, his mask fogging rapidly with each labored breath he took in the thin atmosphere. 8,848 meters above sea level at the roof of the world. More than 6,000 humans have stood here despite everything the mountain throws at them. Hundreds have died trying, their bodies left as frozen monuments to ambition and courage. Every spring, hundreds more line up like it's a festival, chasing the summit despite the deadly odds and the mountain's unrelenting wrath that claims lives yearly. He offered the proctor a spare oxygen bottle with a steady hand that belied his inner turmoil and racing thoughts about the stakes. Thalix accepted it with visibly shaking claws, his golden eyes betraying deep uncertainty and a growing respect mixed with unmistakable fear of what he was witnessing. Class 12.1 The mountain wind howled louder around them, as if the peak itself was warning them to turn back before it was too late and the consequences became permanent and fatal for the mission. They pushed deeper into the tour, the dread building relentlessly with each new revelation and each rising number on the device that refused to stop climbing. The Amazon rainforest closed around them like a living, breathing wall of green that pressed in from all sides with oppressive force. 100% humidity made the air feel thick enough to drink with every breath taken. 38°C combined with the moisture to create a suffocating soup that clung to the skin and sapped energy rapidly. Insects swarmed in dense clouds that buzzed constantly around them. In the distance, a jaguar screamed a raw challenge through the trees, a stark reminder of hidden dangers lurking everywhere in the undergrowth. Thalix's suit locked into full biohazard mode with a series of alarmed beeps and flashing indicators that lit up the area around them. Venomous creatures lurking at every step ready to strike without warning. Parasites that burrow into flesh and consume from within slowly over time. Plants that dissolve skin on contact with deadly efficiency. This forest is a biological nightmare factory designed to kill anything that does not belong here or adapt perfectly. Arlen pushed through thick, dripping vines with determination, sweat streaming down his face in rivers as the humidity sapped his strength steadily with each movement. Indigenous tribes have lived here for thousands of years without any of your advanced technology, perfectly adapted to its dangers and secrets through generations of accumulated knowledge. We have catalogued millions of species, and we still discover brand new ones every single week with excitement and scientific curiosity. Parts of this forest now grow chocolate that humans enjoy around the galaxy, turning poison into pleasure and commerce on a global scale. The LED orb burned a brighter, more insistent red, its glow casting eerie shadows on the surrounding foliage that seemed to close in tighter. Class 13.0 Thalix's voice cracked with visible strain for the first time, the translator unable to hide his shock and confusion completely.
How are you not extinct?
Any rational species would have perished long ago under these combined conditions that assault every sense. The dread continued to build with every passing kilometer, pressing down like an invisible weight that made breathing harder and thought slower under the strain. In the bone-dry Atacama desert, red rock and endless salt flats stretched under a sky so clear and harsh it hurt the eyes to look up for long without discomfort. Some areas had not seen a single drop of rain in centuries, creating a landscape of pure desolation and isolation that stretched endlessly. Thalix's suit screamed about total desiccation, its moisture sensors in full panic mode with constant alerts sounding.
Zero moisture in the air to sustain life of any kind. Radiation levels higher than the surface of Mars.
This place should be as lifeless as open space itself, a barren wasteland where nothing survives for long. Arlen took a slow, deliberate sip from his canteen, the water a small but defiant act against the crushing dryness that surrounded them. NASA tests Mars rovers here because it is the closest thing to another planet we have on Earth for simulation purposes. Yet we built some of the greatest observatories on Earth right beside it, taking advantage of the perfect visibility for stargazing into the cosmos with clarity. Humans still live in the small green pockets that cling to life tenaciously against the odds.
We mine valuable resources from the ground. We stargaze with wonder and curiosity.
We survive and even prosper in the face of such extremes that would defeat others easily. Class 13.8 The silence between them grew heavier with every passing kilometer, thick with unspoken fear and mounting tension that filled the air between the two beings. Then came the brutal, soul-crushing cold of the Siberian taiga at -55°C where survival seemed impossible for outsiders. Snow whipped sideways in blinding sheets that stung the skin like needles driven by the wind. Trees cracked and exploded from the savage frost with gun-like sounds that echoed through the white expanse. The world was frozen white and deathly quiet, as if life itself had surrendered completely to the ice and the cold. Thalix's heaters strained at maximum power, fighting a losing battle against the relentless freeze that penetrated everything in its path. The opposite extreme from the deserts we visited earlier. Your species should have frozen solid long ago, your history ending in ice and forgotten graves beneath the snow and permafrost. Arlen stamped his boots firmly in the deep snow, his breath forming thick clouds that hung in the air before dissipating slowly. Reindeer herders still call this unforgiving land home, moving with the seasons in harmony with its harshness and hidden beauty. We built entire cities beneath this ice through engineering marvels. We mined diamonds under the permafrost with determination and technology.
This
is just another winter to us, a season we have learned to master through ingenuity and endurance over centuries of living here. Class 14.3 The proctor's four eyes darted nervously now, his usual composure cracking under the accumulating data and the sheer impossibility of one world holding so many contradictions at once in perfect balance. Steam vents hissed like angry serpents in the heart of Yellowstone caldera. The ground trembled beneath their feet with constant low rumbles that vibrated through their bones. A massive geyser erupted with a thunderous roar, spraying superheated water high into the sky like a dragon awakening from long slumber. Thalix's sensors wailed in alarm, red lights flashing across his suit in rapid succession without pause or mercy. A supervolcano capable of global catastrophe if it awakens fully from its sleep. Acid pools that eat through metal in moments of contact. Constant earthquakes shaking the foundation of the land. One major eruption could bury entire continents in ash and darkness for years on end with devastating effects. Arlen stood near the edge without retreating even an inch, respirator firmly in place over his face. We turned this sleeping giant into a national park open to all visitors. Millions of humans visit every single year to photograph bison grazing peacefully and boiling pools of death. We vacation on top of an apocalypse that is only sleeping, daring it to wake while we enjoy the view and take memories home with us. Class 14.9 The ground rumbled again beneath them, as if the planet itself was growing impatient with the intrusion and the aliens' ongoing judgments of its nature. Sulfur choked the air heavily in the hellish Danakil depression where life seemed like a mistake of nature. Bright green acid lakes bubbled and hissed beside black lava fields that radiated intense heat upward. The temperature sat at 50 degrees with toxic gases swirling everywhere like invisible killers waiting patiently to strike any intruder. Thalix could barely speak, his translator struggling to keep up with his rising panic and disbelief. The chemistry here would dissolve my suit in mere hours of exposure. This is truly the gateway to hell, a place no sane being should ever enter or even approach without full preparation and heavy protection. Arlen stood tall on a rocky ridge, his scarf whipping violently in the hot, poisonous wind that carried the scent of sulfur. Local Afar people have mined salt here for centuries despite the dangers and the toxic environment that tests every limit of endurance. They call it hell in their ancient stories and legends. We simply call it another Tuesday. Humans adapt. That is what we do best, turn the impossible into the everyday through sheer will and creativity passed down through generations of survivors. Class 15 point for the LAD orb spun frantically, its warnings growing louder and more urgent with each passing second, the tension reaching a fever pitch that made every second feel endless and heavy. The final stop waited on the molten rivers of Kilauea Volcano in Hawaii, where destruction flowed openly and visibly. Rivers of glowing orange lava crawled slowly across black rock under a blood-red sky filled with smoke and ash from the activity. The heat slammed into them like a physical hammer, molten rock burning at over 1100 degrees Celsius, the air shimmering with raw destructive power that tested every limit of technology and biology simultaneously. Thalix's suit glowed with critical overload alerts, systems screaming for relief that would not come in time. The LAD orb spun wildly out of control, its display flashing blood red in panic as the numbers soared beyond previous records set on any world. Planetary Lethality Index, Class 16.7, Quarantine Threshold Breached. Immediate galactic lockdown recommended without delay or further discussion. Thalix turned slowly, all four golden eyes wide with a mixture of awe and raw, paralyzing terror that filled his entire posture. His voice trembled noticeably for the first time during the entire journey across the extremes. Dr. Kane. Your world is not 10 Deathworlds. It is one single impossible nightmare of endless variance and contradiction that should not exist according to science. No planet in recorded history has ever pushed the index this high. My people would not survive a single day here without total protection and constant support from advanced systems. Arlen removed his helmet with deliberate calm despite the scorching conditions that surrounded them. Scorching heat blasted his face, sweat pouring down in streams, yet he stood tall, human, seemingly fragile, and completely unbowed by the inferno around him that raged unchecked and powerful. He looked the proctor directly in the eyes and spoke with quiet but fierce intensity that carried the weight of his species' long history of defiance against the odds. Thalix. We did not merely survive these places against the odds. We were forged by them in the crucible of time and adversity over millennia of struggle. Every extreme you have witnessed today? Humans live there right now in the present day. We work there daily with purpose. We raise families there with hope for tomorrow. We laugh there despite the dangers that surround us. We turned every nightmare into homes, into laboratories for discovery, into tourist attractions that millions visit for pleasure and wonder year after year without fear. Your probes saw 10 separate hells scattered across imaginary worlds that never existed in reality. We saw one beautiful, savage, magnificent planet that made us the toughest, most resilient species this galaxy has ever known through trial and error and adaptation. If you lock Earth away behind quarantine walls out of fear of the unknown, you are not protecting the galaxy from a death world. You are protecting the galaxy from us and all that we can become when we are free to explore and grow. The LAD orb hovered uncertainly, spinning slower now, almost confused by the overwhelming data it had collected across the impossible journey through Earth's extremes that defied all logic and expectations. For one long, breathless moment that stretched into eternity, only the deep, primal roar of flowing lava filled the air with its constant rumble and power. The fate of Earth hung by the thinnest, most fragile thread imaginable in that instant. One word from the proctor could end humanity's future among the stars in an instant with no appeal possible. Then Proctor Thalix did something no Corrigan had ever done in the face of a Deathworld classification during official proceedings or evaluations. He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that rolled across the molten fields like distant thunder, breaking the suffocating tension and shifting the balance in that critical moment of decision. He reached out with a scaled hand and deliberately powered down the LAD, silencing its frantic warnings once and for all with finality and resolve.
Arlen. My report to the Directorate will be clear and unambiguous. 10 Deathworlds? No. One world of unbreakable survivors who laugh in the face of extinction daily. Humanity will not be quarantined under my recommendation or assessment. You have earned your place among the stars through sheer defiance and adaptability that defies all logic and previous experience we have encountered. Arlen extended his hand with steady resolve and confidence. Thalix took it firmly, bare scales pressing against human skin, two vastly different species that had stared into the abyss and refused to blink even once throughout the ordeal. As the shuttle rose smoothly above the glowing rivers of lava, the night sky of Earth stretched out beneath them in all its beauty and hidden deadliness, a world of contrasts and endless potential waiting to be explored by those brave enough to try. One world. 10 extremes. Infinite human defiance. And the galaxy would never be the same again after this encounter that challenged everything known. And that, my friends, is why you should never underestimate a Deathworlder. Especially when that Deathworld is Earth and its people refuse to yield no matter the cost. Because for humans, every single day is just another Tuesday in paradise no matter what the universe throws at them or how hard it tries to break them.